Hi everyone, my name is Kuljit. Welcome to another exciting episode of Humanly Speaking, a podcast where we try to explore the person behind the leader. Very keen to know their stories, their failures, and more importantly, the philosophies that shaped them. Today we have a very exciting personality. I believe his journey can actually be a Netflix series. And it's going to be all about resilience, reinventing himself, and a little bit of butter chicken. You'll know what I mean. I'm very happy and excited to welcome Saurabh Jaggi, whom we know as Pixie. He's the head of culture, learning, and talent development at Maxis in Malaysia. Pixie was born and raised in Delhi, and Pixie comes from a legendary Moti Mahal family. Yes, the family that introduced India and the world with the spices and the flavors of butter chicken, dal makhani, and paneer tikka. Pixie's grandfather, Mr. Kundan Lal Jaggi, moved from Pakistan to India during partition, and he pretty much had nothing. He started selling food on cart and eventually built up a food empire. That's the legacy of grit, optimism, and hospitality that actually shaped Pixie's life and, more importantly, his leadership style. Today, we'll go a little bit deeper in Pixie's life. His transformation from working in hotel management to HR transformation, having a fear of stage to actually chatting on global forums, and his journey from Delhi to Malaysia. And why this conversation is important is when I was chatting to Pixie, one takeaway for me was his journey tells me one very important story that resilience is not a skill, it's a way of life. Pixie, welcome. Very excited to have you here.
Thank you, Kuljit. At the outset, I want to thank Team Disperse for this honor. Very happy to be here.
Excellent. Pixie, your journey is like a masterclass in reinvention. So we'll have to go back to the beginning, actually. This entire story where you were raised in a very legendary family of Moti Mahal. Can you tell us a little bit about your early life and what are the lessons that you learned that shaped who you are today?
Sure. As you already know and mentioned, I grew up in New Delhi in a joint family, and I was greatly influenced by the elders in my family, especially my grandfather, late Shri Kundalal Jaggi, who has always been my idol. Now, there were things that he actually taught me, and there were things I learned by osmosis. Now, when I say osmosis in the world of psychology, osmosis has been used metaphorically to describe passive learning or learning by observation, learning by influence, learning by your environment and your ecosystem. So there were things I learned and there were things that were taught to me. There were few things that he taught me, I remember very categorically. The first thing was he said, better go to work very hard. If somebody is paying you X, you go to work as if you're being paid 2X. So that was something that always remained with me. Second thing he
Interesting.
said is take risks, be bold and take risks. Grab the opportunities that come your way and figure out later how to do them. And third, he said, how you say is much more important than what you say. So when you speak to people, always remember how you're talking to them. And he never liked, and I grew up with all my cousins, my brothers, sisters, and we were a joint family of, 5, 6 siblings growing up together. He taught all of us that don't badmouth anyone. If you can't say good things about people, don't say bad things about people.
Mm,
So that was the kind of upbringing we all had, and I was greatly influenced by that. Now, in terms of osmosis, things that I learned just from my ecosystem, as I said, I was greatly influenced by all the elders in my family. One thing I learned was Feeding people was a great way of bonding and networking, something that has stuck with me all through my life. Second thing, uh, help the underprivileged, be the voice of the voiceless, whether you're dealing with animals or humans, and help people in times of need, especially those who can never pay you back, who can never reciprocate in the same manner. So this is something we learned just by sheer observation. Third thing was always stay grounded. One thing for sure with everybody in life, your success and your failure never stay the same. You will always have ups and downs. It's always good to remain level headed, always good to remain grounded, while you navigate through your multiple successes and failures in life. And one thing I think that I learned very, very late in life was that tomorrow begins today. There is never a good time to start anything. Being the eldest sibling in the family, the eldest grandson, I was always, wanted to carry the family legacy forward. I wanted to, build the restaurant empire, take it forward. But I always kept putting it off. Maybe tomorrow, maybe when the time is right, maybe when I, grow up a little more, maybe when I've made a bit of money, maybe when I have a better network. And that tomorrow never came. But I'm so glad that my younger brother Raghav, he's opened a chain of restaurants by the name Daryaganj, and that's become really popular, in India. And now he's gone overseas as well. So at least there's somebody in the family who's taking the family legacy forward.
Wow, there are so many lessons, that we heard from you right now. Pixie, when you and me were chatting, there was one thing which stayed with me. I think your late grandfather also had a knack of saying few things that stay with you. And I think you said, the more you sweat in peace is when you bleed
Less
less
you
in.
bleed in war.
Yeah, it's like, planning matters more than the execution. And that's quite interesting. So tell us, where did you hear this? How do you practice this in your daily life? And how it has shaped up your career?
Look, I've always believed, and I say this from my heart, that preparation is the key to success. And it's always helped me both personally as well as professionally in any pursuit of life. When you look around, even, Tendulkar, the greatest batsman, he's conquered so much, achieved so much in life. But even if, when he was playing a Ranji game, his level of preparation in the nets would be similar. I mean, a lot of otherwise international stars would not even prepare for a friendly match or a domestic match, would not, bother to go to sets, but not him. I remember other quote that Bruce Lee had said. He said, I don't fear the man who's practiced 1,000 kicks, one time, but I fear the man who's practiced that one kick 1,000 times. So basically, again, boiling down to practice and preparation. I think same philosophy for me. You might be an expert in whatever you do. In my 30 years of career, I've spent close to 15 to 20 years driving Lean Six Sigma innovation, operational excellence all over the world. Uh, Primarily with banking and financial services, where I've spent 25 plus years of my life. Call it trait, call it skill, call it philosophy of life, came in very, very handy. You know, whether it's about pitching a proposal, creating some presentations, doing a training, coaching people, networking, etc., etc. Whatever might the situation be, prepare as if this is the final match that you're going to play. Right. I remember a very important instance. Something it'll always stay with me. For life. Something very small in the larger scheme of things, but um, very heartening to recall the moment. It was back in the year 2007, 2008. I was working with UBS Investment Bank in India. And I'd undertaken a project of traveling to about 8 countries and delivering Six Sigma programs and helping them identify the right project process improvement opportunities and stuff. And, I was sort of traveling all over Asia and Europe at that point in time. In about 6 to 7 months, I completed about 8 countries. So I had done all the preparation, training materials I developed myself. Everything was ready. A month before my first destination, that was Beijing, before China, I got in touch with the local contact person there. Discussed, for me, preparation is not just about the material, but also about, who am I going to be meeting, who will I be training, what's their background, why they're coming for this engagement. What do they want to get out of it, etc., etc. And I learned that these bunch of wonderful 20 wonderful colleagues from China were attending this program because this was to define the next S curve in in the organization. Otherwise, they you know, might not have some of them might not have a job, or some be doing different. But by learning this skill, they would be able to drive some process improvements and add another flavor to the work that they were doing. And the second thing I learned, that was just a month before my travel to Beijing, is at least 50% of the participants do not understand English, or English will be a huge challenge for them. Now, I don't know how much, Kuljit, you're familiar with the world of Six Sigma, but I'm talking about 20 years back when this skill, this methodology was fairly new in the market. Even the best of people, the smartest of people from the Ivy League schools, when I would train them, they would find it a bit difficult to actually understand, operate from the word go. Now, here I'm supposed to train a bunch of, wonderful colleagues um, in the language that they don't understand. Huge challenge, right? So I got in touch with the same person, my PSC, my local contact there. Gave him 100 slides, pinpointed which were the key messages, asked him to translate many of those slides into Mandarin, then send me back 2 weeks before the my travel date. And then I prepared so hard that I exactly knew which word in which line on which slide, there were 100 plus slides, meant what. And eventually, when I went to Beijing, I actually did a 1 day program where half the slides were in English, half the slides were in Mandarin. But I knew exactly what I was training, what was what. And then for every key message, it was being translated by the PIC who was sitting in the first. So this was the level of preparation, which is why I say that the more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war. If your preparation is good, your probability of faltering or the event failing is very, very minimal.
Hard work is your special superpower, Pixie, clearly. When you were saying this thing, how you went and, um, the people's life were dependent on it to get the S curve back. That's a lot of pressure, Pixie. And as leaders, failures are part of a life, self-doubts are part of a life. Um, Two very different pictures. Pixie today, super confident, walking into boardrooms, doing this very high impact coaching and training session. And Pixie had self doubt in early stages of life, where you were worried about, getting on the stage. You were worried about, failing grades. How did this transformation happen, Pixie? Because they show two very different pictures.
It's a great question, Kuljit. And there is no one answer to it. I think a few things happened around that time, um, and that really influenced my mindset. First, I think I went to a wonderful school, Mount St. Mary's, Delhi Cant, the best school I could have gone to. Still very, very, fond of my school, attached to my school. I think it was a great training ground for any to become a good human being and a good professional in life. By the time I reached class 5 or class 6, that's when you had to participate in front of the school, etc. I developed stage fright, and I wasn't very comfortable in speaking in front of people. And in one of my heart to heart sessions with my class teacher, and she was also my Hindi teacher, Mrs. Dodi, I shared this with her. And she was very sweet. I think she took it upon herself to help me out of this situation. So she started giving me opportunities to participate in, recite a poetry in front of the class, in the school assembly in front of, so many hundreds of people, etc. And I would get onto the stage and I would falter. So I remember this time very clearly. I had to recite a poetry, three stanza poetry without a paper in my hand. I think I managed the first para quite well. I fumbled in the second and I forgot the third. So I was standing before these hundreds of people in school, on a raised platform, looking at my teacher. And I was saying, I actually did this in front of, so everybody started laughing. And she was also laughing. So she says, "It's fine, come down, come down." And I said, "I'm never going back there again." She says, "No, you'll get an opportunity next month again, and month after that, and month after that." I think she helped me prepare, coach, and then inspired and motivated me so much that through all these downfalls, I managed to collect myself. And eventually, in that annual Hindi poetry elocution contest, I actually won third. Came won the bronze medal, came third that year. So that was a big change. Second thing, I think that there's a saying in Hindi कि खरबूजे को देख के खरबूजा रंग बदलता है. A watermelon would change. A melon would change its color, in the presence, in the company of other melons, right? I think I had a bunch of wonderful besties, Rohit, Vicky, and Sanjay. They're still my best friends from childhood. And those guys were very smart when it came to, on stage, jamming sessions and debates and, speaking, etc. I think also in their company, I learned a lot, and it helped me overcome my gaps in life. So I always tell people that, you're basically, if you really want to grow better in life, make sure your company is good. So that made a difference. Third thing was being the eldest grandson in the family. I always had this unsaid secret pressure of being a role model to all my siblings who looked up to me, whether when it came to grades, curricular activities, sports, or just representing the Jaggi family or whatever. So I had this pressure of doing well in every walk of life so that I could be a good role model to my brothers and sisters. So that also made a difference. And then I think when I started my corporate career, I went through a lot of changes, from customer service, hotels, to when I joined American Express, risk management, fraud control, credits and collections, business transformation. I did a lot of different kind of roles in my life. But when I was introduced to the journey of Lean Six Sigma, I became the first Six Sigma leader in Amex TRS. And soon after that, became a black belt. And soon after that, Prudential hired me as a black belt. So I moved to Bombay. And I had a wonderful line manager. His name is Anurag at that time. Now, Anurag is the most unconventional leader I have ever worked with in my life. I must have worked with over 20 plus leaders in 30 years of my career, but Anurag was very different. So during one of our SWOT analysis, he gave me feedback. He says, Pixie, you're technically very strong. I see you driving projects. I don't see you opening up a lot when it comes to these, meetings with the management, and, you tend to reserve your comments. Why is that? I said, I don't know, maybe it's, the stage fright still continues, or maybe I'm not very comfortable. Then he asked me, he says, how many training programs did you do in Amex? I said, not very much in the field of Six Sigma. He said, okay. He said, don't worry, we'll work on it. Let's give ourselves 6 months and we'll get there. I said, okay. Next week, there was a training program that had to be delivered to the leaders in the organization. Anurag was developing content and delivering it. I was only supposed to be there just to help him with some exercises. And I went with him. I'd done the infrastructure preparation for all the training, so I sort of saw through the material. I think 30 minutes into the training program, he gets a call and he says, "Guys, I'm very sorry. I have to excuse myself. The CEO is calling me for a meet. Um, Pixie will continue the training and I'll join you guys later." So he told me, he says, "Do a few slides. I should be back in half an hour." I said, "Okay." That half an hour became 6 hours or 7 hours, and I was here delivering a program that I had not developed, I had not even prepared for as much as a trainer would do. But technically, I was okay, so I sort of managed to complete. In the evening, when I met him, I said, "What happened? You didn't come back." He says, "How did the program go?" I said, "Program went fine." He spoke to a few participants, and they were all okay. Feedback was okay. So then I asked him. I said, "Did you really go for that CEO meeting?" He says, "No, that was a staged call."
Very
He says, "If I'd
unconvinced.
given you 6 months, 6 months would have become 8 months, 9 months, because there's never a good time to start these things. But when I pushed you in the middle of the sea or the swimming pool, because you knew the basics, and it was an opportunity that had to be given to you, and you swam quite well. And then he said, if you can do this, you can do anything else. So don't worry about saying that I can't participate or I don't have much experience." He says, "Now you do." That for me was an eye opener. I'm not sure how many, if this is a good way of coaching people today or this generation, but for me, this experience, if I remember this even 22 years later, so you can imagine, this had an
Yeah.
impact on.
Pixie, it's very nice when you were, telling me that story about this stage fright. I come from a humble background, two brothers who wanted to prove ourselves. And my brother was like the super smart guy winning the education competition, the smartest guy in the school. And I was not one of them. I was always on the ground playing. And I actually went to the stage once and I was giving a speech on something and I froze. And that fear actually is there with me even today. So, when you were saying that story, I could play that in my mind. I can understand how anxious you get, but it's just about doing that again and again and again and again, and then you get very, very comfortable. Very, very inspiring, Pixie.